The Myth of the Titanic, Part 1. RMS Titanic supposedly sunk on the 15th of April 1912, but it's highly unlikely that is true. When you look at the evidence in detail, then something else happened that day, and it wasn't the Titanic that sunk. The true story is actually much more compelling than the one which has been widely publicised over the decades. This is not to say that hundreds of innocent people didn't lose their lives. That is the case, but the true story is quite remarkable, and it's not been represented by the mainstream over all these years. The apparent sinking of the Titanic cannot be examined properly in total isolation from other world events of that time. On the night of the 14th to the 15th of April 1912, a huge steamship, the largest and most luxurious in the world, sunk in the North Atlantic Ocean. 1,500 people either drowned or more likely froze to death in the icy waters. You might think you know the real story because we've been presented with the facts all our lives, from children to adulthood. But are you absolutely sure of those facts? How much investigation have you personally done? There is a lot of contradiction and disagreement on the so-called facts that make up the official story of the Titanic. The book and the feature film, A Night to Remember, was first published in 1956 and was written by an American named Walter Lord. Many of the significant facts within the pages of his work have subsequently been proven to be false. However, the same version of the story still persists as the truth today. Such is the power of repetition on the human mind, which is a methodology which has been used throughout history in terms of driving public opinion. If you do your research using public reference libraries and look into the Harland and Wolff public records and the original Marconi wireless records of the time, then you may find yourself becoming shocked by what they reveal. For example, the location of the wreck of the Titanic allegedly was discovered for the first time in 1985 by Dr. Robert Ballard of Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute. However, this was known about from at least 1953 and probably even much earlier than that. In August of 1953, there was a report appeared in the Sunday Chronicle newspaper written by Victor Sims. The gist of that article was that a British Navy expedition had located the wreck site and was thought to be searching for £8 million of gold, which is now equivalent to at least 1,000 million, a billion, probably more now, probably near 1.5 billion. Because I'm looking here at figures, it might have been even 10 years ago at that estimate, so we're probably talking about quite a bit more now. So they believed it to be on board the ship when it foundered in 1912. In the aftermath of the Agadir crisis in 1911, J.P. Morgan, the owner of the White Star Line, began shipping substantial quantities of gold and other precious valuables accumulated in their foreign undertakings back to where they probably correctly believed to be the safety of the United States. However, in this instance, the gold was likely to be the property of the British government and was being transported to the US for reasons unknown, but possibly as a precaution due to the upcoming Great War, World War I. In November 2000, the Royal Navy actually conceded that one, could have been more than one, of its vessels, HMS Sirius, was in the vicinity at the time the Titanic foundered. It transpires that the Royal Navy had been not exactly telling the truth over the years, and it's now proven that there was mystery ships around that night, more than one. And as well as the 1953 Royal Navy salvage operation attempting to find JP Morgan's missing millions, 25 years later, in 1978, there would be another attempt to locate whatever it was that they believed was missing. And this was the HMS Hecate. It looks like Hecate, but it's pronounced Hecate, a Royal Navy vessel. HMS Hecate returned to the exact locations that were covered in 1953 to redouble the Navy's efforts to salvage the Titanic's cargo. It is certain that they did locate the wreck on this occasion, and they took photographs, 2 of which have entered the public domain. One of these photos depicts a section of the forecastle deck with the anchor chains still in situ, and is very definitely a picture of an Olympic class ship, and this therefore constitutes, beyond any reasonable doubt, proof that the Royal Navy did indeed investigate the wreck site of Titanic prior to its official discovery in 1985. Officially, according to the British Navy, they had no vessels operating in the North Atlantic at these times in 1953, 1978 or 1985. But we know this is untrue. It's worth stating what we actually do know for absolute certain regarding the events of the 14th into 15th of April 1912. What we do know for sure was that a very large ship sank in the North Atlantic in the early hours of the 15th of April. We also know that more than 1,000 lives were lost. Several hundred survivors were rescued by the liner Carpathia several hours later. However, almost everything else about what happened on that fateful night is subject to dispute. The truth, the real story of the events will leave you stunned and incredulous, and the real story is much more compelling than the actual official narrative that we're being fed. Amazing as that was, the real story is mind-blowing. There is a great abundance of strange anomalies surrounding the whole subject. This is really a story about probability, which is what's likely to be the case given a close examination of everything that's known. What actually did happen, what was the likelihood of it, and what was reported to have happened, and how likely was that? So we're going to look at the credibility of the official narrative against a much higher likelihood or probability of something significantly different having happened on that night.